My son's teacher called him a liar for saying his dad works at NASA. What happened at Parents' Night shocked her and changed our school forever. I, 34, never expected to become the center of a school drama at my age. It all started last week when my 8-year-old son came home from school. As a single dad, I've learned to recognize the signs of something being seriously wrong. "What's up, buddy?" I asked, setting aside the technical documents I'd been reviewing for work. "Mrs. K called me a liar today," he mumbled, eyes fixed on the floor. "In front of everyone." My stomach dropped. "What? Why would she do that?" "Because I said you work at NASA for career day. She said I was making it up to sound cool." I felt my blood pressure rising. Yes, I work at NASA, not as an astronaut or anything glamorous, but as a systems engineer specializing in propulsion systems. It's not something I brag about, but it's my career, and I've been there for nearly a decade. "Did you tell her that I really do work there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He nodded. "She said if my dad really worked at NASA, she would have known because she knows all the parents' jobs, and nobody's parents work at fancy places like that in our district." I was livid but tried not to show it. Our neighborhood isn't upscale, and I choose to live here because it's close to my parents who help with childcare when I travel for work. But to publicly humiliate my son? That crossed a line. "Don't worry," I told him. "Parent-teacher night is this Thursday. We'll clear this up." Thursday evening arrived, and I made sure to dress professionally, not to intimidate, but to make a point. I wore my NASA polo, the one with the insignia that I rarely wear outside of work, and brought my ID badge. My son insisted on coming along, practically bouncing with anticipation. "Dad, are you going to show her your rocket pictures?" he asked as we walked toward the school. "Let's just have a calm conversation first," I replied, though I had indeed brought my tablet with documentation of my work. When we entered the classroom, Mrs. K was sitting at her desk, speaking with another parent. She was younger than I expected, probably in her late 20s, with a stern expression that softened only when addressing the parent in front of her. My son tugged at my sleeve. "That's her," he whispered loudly. After waiting our turn, we approached her desk. She looked up with a practiced smile that faltered slightly when she saw my NASA polo. "Hello, I'm Mrs. K," she said, extending her hand. "And you must be—" "I'm Lucas's father," I replied, shaking her hand firmly. "I understand there was an incident last week during career day." Her smile tightened. "Ah, yes. Lucas has quite an imagination. We had to have a discussion about the importance of truthfulness." My son pressed against my side, and I could feel him trembling slightly. "Actually," I said, placing my ID badge on her desk, "I do work at NASA. I'm a systems engineer with the propulsion team." Her eyes widened as she picked up the badge, examining it closely as if checking for forgery. "This looks real," she admitted reluctantly. "It is real," I confirmed. "I've been with NASA for 9 years. My son wasn't lying." She cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, it just seemed unlikely. We don't typically have parents in such specialized fields." "Regardless of how unlikely it seemed," I said, keeping my voice level, "calling a child a liar in front of his peers without verifying the facts first is unprofessional and hurtful." My son, gaining confidence, piped up, "I told you my dad helps build rocket engines." Mrs. K's face flushed. "I apologize for the misunderstanding. It's just that children often exaggerate their parents' occupations, and—" "This wasn't an exaggeration," I interrupted. "And a simple, 'I'll check with your parents' would have been more appropriate than public humiliation." She nodded stiffly. "You're right. I should have handled it differently." I pulled out my tablet and opened a folder of photos. "Since we're here, perhaps my son would like to share what his dad actually does." For the next few minutes, my son proudly showed Mrs. K photos of me at various NASA facilities, explaining in his 8-year-old way what different parts of the engines do. The teacher's expression shifted from embarrassment to genuine interest. "This is impressive," she admitted. "I had no idea. Sometimes reality exceeds our expectations," I replied. "I'd appreciate if you could correct this misunderstanding with the class." She nodded quickly. "Of course. First thing tomorrow." As we left the classroom, my son was practically skipping. "Did you see her face, Dad?" She was so surprised. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Yes, buddy. Sometimes people need to be reminded not to make assumptions." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Update 1. The next afternoon, my son burst through the door with a completely different energy than the week before. "Dad, Mrs. K apologized to the whole class," he exclaimed, dropping his backpack on the floor. "And she asked if you would come for a special career day talk." I raised my eyebrows. "Did she now?" "Yeah. She said it would be educational." He sounded out carefully. "Can you do it? Please? You can bring your rocket stuff." I was hesitant. While I was glad the teacher had made things right with my son, I wasn't particularly eager to spend more time with someone who had been so quick to call my child a liar. "I'll think about it," I promised. That evening, I received an email from Mrs. K. It was surprisingly humble. "I want to extend my sincere apologies for the incident with your son. My behavior was unprofessional and harmful. If you're willing, we would love to have you speak to our class about your work at NASA. Many of our students have limited exposure to STEM careers, and this could be truly inspiring for them." I sat with the email for a day before responding. My initial anger had subsided, and I recognized an opportunity not just for my son, but for other kids who might benefit from seeing different career possibilities. I agreed to come the following week. The presentation day arrived, and I'd prepared a kid-friendly overview of what we do at NASA, complete with 3D, printed models of engine components, and some spectacular launch footage that always captivates audiences. When I arrived at the school, the principal was waiting with Mrs. K. "We're so excited to have you here," the principal gushed. "Mrs. K told me about your work, and we rarely get parents with such fascinating careers visiting." Mrs. K looked genuinely contrite as she showed me to the classroom, where 25 eager faces turned toward me the moment I walked in. My son was beaming with pride from his seat. "Class, this is Lucas's father, who works as an engineer at NASA," Mrs. K introduced me. And I owe him and Lucas an apology because I incorrectly told Lucas that he was not being truthful about his father's job. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. The directness of her apology in front of the class surprised me. It was a meaningful gesture that showed genuine accountability. For the next 40 minutes, I talked about how rockets work, the missions NASA is planning, and how many different types of jobs exist within the space program. The kids were fascinated, asking questions about everything from how toilets work in space to whether aliens are real. "You don't have to be a straight A student to work at NASA," I told them. "But you do need curiosity and persistence." I failed physics the first time I took it in college, but I didn't give up. I could see Mrs. K taking notes during this part, and several children who weren't usually engaged were hanging on every word. After the presentation, while the kids were examining the 3D models I'd brought, Mrs. K approached me. "Thank you for doing this," she said quietly. "I've been teaching for 4 years, and I'm still learning. What I did was wrong, and I appreciate you turning it into a learning opportunity instead of escalating it to administration." Her honesty was disarming. "We all make mistakes," I replied. "It's what we do afterward that matters." As I was packing up, the principal appeared again. "This was wonderful," she said. "Would you consider joining our STEM committee? We're trying to enhance our science curriculum, and your expertise would be invaluable." I hadn't expected this turn of events, but I found myself agreeing. My son's education was important to me, and if I could help improve it for him and his peers, why not? Update 2. It's been 3 months since the parent-teacher night incident, and the situation has evolved in ways I never anticipated. The STEM committee turned out to be just 4 parents, now including me, and 2 teachers trying to improve science education with virtually no budget. During our second meeting, I mentioned that NASA has educational outreach programs that provide resources to schools. "We'd never qualify for those," Mrs. K said immediately, falling back into her assumption pattern. "Actually," I countered, "many of these programs specifically target schools with limited resources. Let me look into it." A few weeks and several emails later, our school was approved for a NASA educational partnership program that included teaching materials, virtual astronaut visits, and even a small grant for equipment. The principal was ecstatic. Mrs. K was stunned. "I can't believe you did this," she said after the announcement. "This will change how we teach science for years." My son has become something of a minor celebrity at school, not just as NASA Dad's kid, but because he started a space club during lunch periods where interested students learn about different missions and space phenomena. Mrs. K, to her credit, has become one of my son's biggest advocates. She's recommended him for the district's gifted program based on his self-directed learning and enthusiasm for sharing knowledge, qualities she admits she initially overlooked because of her preconceptions. Last week, she asked to speak with me after a STEM committee meeting. "I've been reflecting a lot on what happened," she said. "I realized I had these unconscious biases about what kinds of families attend our school. I assumed certain careers were out of reach for our community." "That's a harmful assumption," I replied. "Kids internalize those limitations." She nodded. "I know. I'm working with the principal to organize a diverse careers fair. Would you help us reach out to people in different fields who might not fit the expected mold?" I agreed, impressed by her growth mindset. Update 3. It's been a year since that fateful parent-teacher night, and today was the school's first Possibilities Fair, an expanded career day featuring 30 professionals from diverse backgrounds and fields. My NASA colleagues showed up in force. We had engineers, an astrophysicist, and even a former astronaut who now works in administration. But they were just a fraction of the presenters. There were also artists, entrepreneurs, trades workers, medical professionals, and more, all breaking stereotypes in some way. The most powerful moment came during the assembly when Mrs. K took the microphone. "This fair exists because I made a mistake," she told the entire school. "I told a student he was lying about his father's job because I couldn't imagine someone from our school community working at NASA. I was wrong, not just factually but in my thinking. No one should put limits on what you can become." My son, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. "Dad," he whispered, "I think I want to be a teacher when I grow up." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Not an engineer or astronaut." He shook his head. "Mrs. K was wrong about you, but then she fixed it and made things better for everyone. I want to help kids like that." I felt a lump in my throat. That's a pretty amazing reason. After the fair, Mrs. K approached us with the principal. "We've been awarded a district innovation grant based on our NASA partnership outcomes," the principal announced. and we'd like you to help us implement a new hands-on STEM lab for the school. All because you stood up for your son, Mrs. K added. Sometimes the most important lessons aren't in our curriculum. As we walked to the car, my son looked thoughtful. What's on your mind, buddy? I asked. I'm glad Mrs. K was wrong about you, he said. But I'm also glad she learned from it. Do you think everyone can learn from mistakes like that? Not everyone, I admitted. But the best people do. They recognize when they're wrong and work to make things right. He nodded, satisfied with this answer. That night, as I helped him with his science homework, I reflected on the unexpected journey of the past year. What began as a teacher's thoughtless comment had transformed into a catalyst for change, not just for my son or his class, but for an entire school community. Sometimes being underestimated is the beginning of proving what's possible. And sometimes, standing up for the truth does more than correct a single wrong. It opens doors that everyone thought were locked. My son wasn't the only one who learned important lessons this year. I discovered that advocating for him taught him to advocate for himself, and that forgiveness coupled with accountability can transform an adversary into an ally. As for Mrs. K, she sent me a message last week. Thank you for the opportunity to become a better teacher and person. Some mistakes turn out to be the best professional development. I couldn't have said it better myself.